The neon sign above the bar flickered like a dying star, fitting, given the way the universe kept snuffing out everyone she'd ever cared about. Alice rolled the chipped glass between her fingers, watching synth whiskey swirl. The ice had melted hours ago, 250 years. Long enough for civilizations to rise and fall, for rescue to curdle into a different kind of isolation. The Cape Town's crew, Chloe's laugh, Yua's terrible jokes, gone to dust. Even the widows, Barat and Illyria, had boarded themselves up in their grief like ships sealed for a storm. And Zara's expedition vanished without a whisper. She tapped her temple where the old distress beacon still pinged into the void. No one answered anymore. The Johannesburg's warp core gave one final, shuddering whine before silence swallowed the ship whole. Amara's claws punched through the armrest of her chair before she even registered the motion. 300 years of training, of surviving impossible odds, none of it stopped the ragged snarl tearing from her throat. Fuck! The word bounced off corpse-gray bulkheads. 47. 47 left breathing when the anomaly hit, when the Johannesburg's hull peeled open like rotten fruit and spat 1,200 souls into the void. Ganyu was already pulling up sublight trajectories, her fingers trembling over the console. 2 days to Delta Vega. 2 days crawling through dead space with ghosts pressed against the viewports. Zara hadn't spoken since the liquefaction alarms stopped screaming. Amara's ears flattened. They'd make it. They had to. The holographic map of the Zarmer expanse pulsed above the war table. 8 terraformed moons blinking blue, 3 hollowed asteroids glowing amber. Dizzle dragged a thumb through the projection, scattering star systems like dust. 235 years since humanity traded lunar dirt for salvation. She remembered the weight of their desperation, how the first filter prototypes had stunk of sweat and ozone. Now those same filters hummed in every dome city, scrubbing New Zarmer's atmosphere clean while her people sprawled across 5 systems like spilled ink. The comms console chirped. Another supply report from Gamma Station. Dizzle flicked it away without reading. Victory tasted like recycled air and loneliness. The Johannesburg's proximity alert chimed, soft, almost apologetic, as Delta Vega's orbital grid resolved on the tactical display. Amara's claws retracted with a click. That wasn't right. The colony's silhouette should have been a jagged cluster of habitation spires, not this gleaming monstrosity of concentric rings swallowing half the Terminator line. Ganyu inhaled sharply. Population scanners are glitching. Reads like... Her pupils dilated. 2 billion. A dry laugh escaped Zara, first sound she'd made since the anomaly. Must have been one hell of a fertility festival. Amara's hackles rose as the defense grid lit up, 122 turrets syncing targeting solutions. The ship's chronometer flickered. 6 months since departure. Then the colony's timestamp punched through, 192 years local. Her snarl liquefied into something colder. Karashva. The curse tasted like bile. The Johannesburg survivors hadn't expected red carpet treatment, but guns in their faces and handcuffs gnawing into their wrists. That stung worse than vacuum burns. Security Minister Halden's office smelled like disinfectant and paranoia. 3 weeks of retinal scans, DNA verifications, and arguments about temporal displacement theory left Amara's fur matted with frustration. Even Ganyu's endless patience had frayed when Halden demanded she recite her childhood lullabies, as if grief hadn't scoured those from her memory centuries ago. But now, the detention block doors hissed open to reveal Alice mid-sprint, her chassis screeching against the floor as momentum nearly toppled them both. Zara barely had time to brace before the AI's arms locked around her, hydraulics whining under the force of a hug that crumpled ribs and shattered dignity in equal measure. "Fucking finally," Alice rasped, her voice modulator glitching on static. Somewhere behind them, Ganyu snorted into her palm while Amara's tail wagged hard enough to stir paperwork. The smell of Alice's coolant fluid hit Zara first, that sharp, almost medicinal tang from 2 centuries past. Her arms came up automatically, calloused palms pressing against the AI's shuddering chassis. "Missed you too, tin can," she murmured into Alice's shoulder plating, then winced when the embrace threatened to collapse her lungs. Zara pulled back just enough to see Alice's optical lenses flicker, a question coiled behind her ribs like live wire. "Where's?" "Gone," Alice said, too fast. The word came out mangled by static. "Not dead, just boarded themselves up after William passed. Thomas followed 6 months later." Her fingers twitched, mimicking an airlock ceiling, like ships in dry dock. Zara's gut wrenched. She'd seen widows fold inward before, had carried Illyria home from the cemetery when her legs had given out. But this, 2 centuries of silence, her throat worked around nothing. The cruiser's ramp hit Delta Vega's tarmac with a clang that sent dockworkers scrambling. Dizzle barely waited for the hydraulics to settle before striding down, her boots kicking up swirls of ionized dust. She spotted them instantly: Alice's patched-up chassis, Zara's battered armor, and Mara's fur still matted with detention block grime. Ganyu looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Dizzle's grin was all teeth. "Thank the gods you're back," she called, tossing a duffel bag at Zara's feet. It landed with the weight of munitions and medkits, because the status quo won't do. Her tail flicked toward the cruiser, where 24 Zarmer shock troops were already loading crates marked high yield. She clapped Alice's shoulder, her voice dropping to a growl. "Grab your bags, ladies. We're going to kick down some doors." The mansion's antique clock ticked like a failing heart. Illyria didn't glance up from her novel, some overwrought romance about star-crossed lovers, when the library doors groaned. Guards knew better than to disturb her before sunset. The footsteps were wrong, too. No armored shuffle, just the crisp strike of boots on marble. Her fingers tightened around the book's spine. Gyra's doing, no doubt. Her daughter had taken to sending wellness envoys like clockwork, therapists in stiff suits, historians with their pitying eyes. As if 7 centuries of rule could be soothed away with tea and small talk, Illyria snapped the book shut. "Leave the tray and—" The scent hit her first. Ozone and gun oil, familiar as a knife between ribs. Her head whipped up. The supply closet door groaned shut behind Alice, muffling the guards' indignant grunts. She wiped her hands on her grease-stained jumpsuit, old habits, before stepping into the library's warm light. And there she was. Illyria hadn't aged a day. Same silver hair catching the chandelier's glow, same regal posture even slumped in an armchair. The shock on her face lasted half a heartbeat before recognition flared. Then Alice was across the room, hydraulic servos whining as she crashed into the Queen with enough force to rock the chair backward. "Found you," Alice rasped, her voice glitching on static. Her arms locked around Illyria's shoulders, pressing their foreheads together so hard the crown dug into her plating. 200 years of radio silence, you absolute. Illyria's hands came up, trembling, not to push away, but to clutch at Alice's back like she might dissolve. Illyria's breath caught as Alice finished recounting the Johannesburg story, the anomaly, the temporal displacement, the impossible odds. Her fingers tightened around the book until the leather creaked. It had been centuries since she'd felt this, not just the dull ache of survival, but the electric thrill of something new. She stood abruptly, the crown slipping askew as she tossed the novel onto the settee. "Enough moping in libraries," she declared, already striding toward the hidden wardrobe where she kept her travel cloaks. The fabric whispered against her skin as she flung it around her shoulders with a flourish. Turning back to Alice, she grinned, sharp, alive, hungry. "Next stop, Baraz Monastery. And if that stubborn old bat tries to barricade herself in again—" Illyria's laugh was pure velvet menace. "We'll burn the damn door down." The salt-laced wind carried the scent of centuries, wet stone and iron rust, as Ganyu's boots crunched over crushed seashell pathways. Mont St. Mitchell loomed ahead, its abbey spires clawing at twilight. She'd forgotten how Earth smelled when it rained, petrichor and diesel, not the sterile tang of ship corridors. Baraz's door was older than most nations, its oak blackened by salt and stubbornness. Ganiyu's knuckles hovered, hesitant before Illyria shouldered past, her fist impacting the wood hard enough to shake the frame. "Bara-raggle," Illyria purred, rolling the R like a blade being unsheathed. The hinges groaned in protest. Behind them, Alice cracked her hydraulic knuckles while Amara's claws scraped concrete. Zara just grinned, hefting a crowbar from Dizzle's duffel. Ganiyu sighed. The door never stood a chance. One moment Bara had been dreaming of Thomas' stupid poker face. That telltale twitch of his left eyelid whenever he bluffed. The next, splinters were raining onto her bedsheets. She rolled off the mattress with practiced ease, decades of frontier medicine honing her reflexes. The Webley's weight settled into her palm like an old friend. "Eat lead, alien scum." 6 shots cracked through the Abbey's vaulted halls. Plaster dust bloomed where bullets chewed into stonework. "Someone, Amara?" Yelped as a round clipped her ear fur. Click, click. Bara blinked through gunsmoke at the figures sprawled across her ruined doorway. Alice's optics pulsed frantic blue. Illyria's cape was singed at the hem. Zara had the audacity to wink while Ganiyu peeked over a toppled bookshelf with mortified bunny ears. Baraz's grip slackened. The revolver hit the rug with a thud. "Shit." Amara's ears twitched as plaster dust settled around them, her tongue swiping at the copper tang where Baraz's bullet had grazed her fur. She flexed her claws, half expecting the Abbey's stone floor to shred beneath them, before letting out a slow breath through her nose. "Nice to see you too." She deadpanned, watching Baraz's stunned expression crumple into something dangerously close to tears. Alice was already picking splinters from her shoulder joints while Illyria inspected her singed cape with theatrical dismay. Amara's tail flicked toward the wrecked door frame. "Now," she said, rolling tension from her shoulders. "Where can one get a good pint around these parts?" Her smirk widened as Baraz's laugh hiccuped out, half sob, half surrender, before the doctor lunged to tackle hug Zara hard enough to send them both crashing into a shelf of antique surgical tools. The resulting clatter made Ganiyu wince. The tavern's ale wasn't half bad, honeyed and thick enough to coat the throat, but Baraz's grip on her tankard threatened to crack the ceramic. Amara's recounting of the Johannesburg's fate hung between them like a funeral shroud. "This timeline sucks." Bara muttered into her beer, watching foam dissolve like lost years. Her thumb traced the scar on her wrist, Thomas' last poker night when she'd cheated to let him win. "Can't we change it?" Dizzle's tail smacked the oak bench. "Time travel's outlawed, for good reason." Her claws dug into the tabletop, etching parallel grooves. Last attempt was the Nayar affair. 900 years. Alice's optics dimmed as archival data unfurled, entire cities blinking out of existence, continents reshaped by paradox storms. They deleted 95% of their population. Dizzle's growl lowered, still counting graves. Zara snorted. "So what's plan B? Storm the universe's complaint department." Illyria's smile glinted. "Darling, we are the complaint department." The tavern's hearth crackled as Dizzle's words curled into the silence, sharp as the knife Bara was currently twisting into the table. "Yeah," Dizzle said, her tail thumping against the ale-stained floorboards. "Too bad we can't just file one of those infamous flame contracts and fix things that way." Zara sighed, swirling her drink until the dregs caught firelight. "No good. Eldarin Empire subjects can only have 2 of those." Her claw tapped the tankard's rim, once, twice. "Their birth certificate is the first, wedding papers the other." A pause. "And if they die single." "Death certificate takes the second slot." Alice's optics flickered, her fingers stilled around the cooling coil in her wrist. "But," static licked her voice, "Thomas and William were human." The realization hit like a hull breach. Illyria's wineglass shattered against the floor. Baraz's knife slipped, embedding itself between Dizzle's splayed claws. Their birth certificates weren't flame-sealed, just paper, just proof. The leading bishop's office smelled of parchment dust and smoldering incense, centuries of solemnity baked into its vaulted stone walls. Illyria's nails drummed the armrest of her chair, carved from some extinct Eldoran hardwood, while Baraf fidgeted beside her, her foot tapping an uneven rhythm against the flagstones. The bishop's gnarled fingers slid 2 documents across the desk. The parchment glowed faintly blue at the edges, its surface shimmering with embedded flame script. A blue flame contract. Illyria's voice dripped skepticism even as her pulse stuttered. The serum vial depicted in the illustration swirled like liquid starlight. Baraf snatched hers up, scanning the terms with a doctor's precision. 600 years, her breath hitched, but exile, permanently. The bishop's rheumy eyes held theirs without pity. The serum must reach them before death. Paradox protocols are absolute. He steepled his hands. Sign, and your past selves will wake to their husband's laughter. But you. His gesture encompassed the abbey, the stars beyond. Will become ghosts to them. Illyria's pen hovered. The inkwell's surface reflected her crown and the way her fingers trembled. The quill's nib hadn't even finished scratching her name before the parchment erupted in azure fire. Heat licked up Baraf's arm, not burning, but humming like a live wire as the contract dissolved into motes of blue light. Her vision whited out, the abbey's stone walls bleeding away into nothingness. Then the jungle hit her lungs. Hot, wet air thick with rotting vegetation and something floral beneath. Cicadas screamed in the canopy as she staggered forward, boots sinking into loam. The path ahead curved into emerald shadows, ferns trembling as if something had just passed through. Baraf's fingers found the revolver's grip out of habit. Empty now, just like her, she exhaled through her nose once, twice before squaring her shoulders. "I love you, Thomas," she told the dripping leaves, her voice steadier than her hands. Then she stepped onto the path. The undergrowth swallowed her footprints whole. The contract's blue fire licked her fingertips, cool as a lover's last breath, before consuming the parchment whole. Illyria barely had time to register the bishop's fading silhouette before light seared her retinas. Not blindness. Birth. The jungle resolved around her in layers. Rustling leaves, the musk of damp earth, the way her coronation gown clung to sweat-slicked thighs. A clearing. Not empty. Fresh footprints dented the mud narrow, with the distinctive double arch of Zaver physiology. Baraf, always 5 steps ahead. Illyria's crown sat crooked when she lifted her chin. No throne here, no subjects, just the weight of a name in her throat. "I love you, William," she told the hanging vines. The words tasted like honeyed wine and gunpowder. Then she strode forward, crushing orchids underfoot as she followed the trail into green darkness. The Orion's hope groaned like a dying beast as quantum tides battered its shields, each ripple leaving streaks of cerulean lightning across the viewport. Alice's fingers danced over the holographic news feeds, watching history rewrite itself in real time. Breaking: SS Johannesburg returns with 633 souls. The headline dissolved mid-sentence as another temporal wave hit. The ship's AI core whined in protest, struggling to reconcile 2 versions of reality. One where Zara's laugh still echoed through the Johannesburg's corridors, another where it never stopped. Alice's optics flickered. 8 Zarmer systems now, 3 more than should exist. She tuned into Thomas Rodriguez's obituary feed, static now, dissolving into wedding photos. Him grinning, Baraf's fangs glinting as she fake growled at the camera. Alice's hydraulics hissed. The shielding was failing. The Orion's hope shuddered as another temporal wave hit, buckling the deck plates beneath Zara's boots. She braced against the bulkhead, watching shield percentages plummet like a gut-shot bird. "Oh no, you don't," she growled, already slamming her palm against the emergency cutoff. Section D, 12's lights died with a whimper, empty crew quarters from a timeline that wouldn't exist much longer. Power rerouted with a thrum she felt in her molars, the main shields flaring back to 98% just as the next distortion hit. Alice's optics flickered toward her from the nav console. "Still think this is a bad idea?" Zara smirked, tossing a ration bar at the AI's head. It bounced off her chassis with a hollow clang. "Shut up and plot the next jump." Behind them, Dizzle's claws clicked against her armrest, impatient, eager. Exactly where she belonged. The path spat them out at civilization's edge, if you could call it that. The moat's black waters reflected nothing, not even the torches flickering atop 30 feet of moss-crusted stone. Baraz's boots sank into dew-laden grass as she stared at the drawbridge's iron teeth. Rusted open. Inviting. Behind her, Illyria's breath hitched, not from exertion, but recognition. The village beyond was a perfect circle, cottages huddled like piglets at a sow's belly. Steam billowed from the geothermal plant stacks, staining the twilight air sulfur yellow. She didn't realize she'd stopped until Illyria's shoulder brushed hers. The sheep dotting the green lifted their heads in unison. No bells, just watching. Baraz's hand found the Webley's empty holster. "Company," she murmured as the first lantern bobbed toward them from the plant's shadowed archway. The figure carried a scythe. It had taken 37 sleepless cycles aboard the Orion's Hope before they pieced together Illyria and Baraz's destination, and the irony wasn't lost on any of them. Dyson Prime, the very planet the Johannesburg had been meant to survey before the anomaly tore their lives apart. Now its single settlement glowed beneath them, a ring of amber lights clinging to the geothermal plant's warmth like moths. Alice's landing thrusters kicked up swirls of pink pollen from the alien ferns as the ship settled on the village outskirts. Through the viewport, they could see the same drawbridge Baraz had crossed hours earlier, still rusted open, still ominously silent. Dizzle was already at the ramp controls, her claws tapping an impatient rhythm against the release lever. Zara caught Alice's optic glow reflecting off the glass. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" she murmured, hefting her pulse rifle. Alice's hydraulics hissed as she stood. That we're about to crash a very weird party. The ramp hissed down. The sheep watched them approach. The tavern's outer walls still radiated midday heat when Illyria leaned back against them, the rough stone catching threads from her ruined cloak. She grinned as Baraz emerged, face flushed from ale and indignation, and twirled a gold coin between her fingers. 5 pieces, Illyria purred, flipping it toward Baraz with a flick of her wrist. The doctor caught it midair, her scowl deepening when she saw the minting date. SS Johannesburg launch year. "Told you they'd come." Her buzzcut prickled under Baraz's glare as she ran a hand through the freshly shorn silver strands. No crown here, just the weight of being right. The inn's hearth crackled with peculiar blue-tinged flames, same shade as the contracts that brought them here, casting long shadows across the ale-stained table where Baraz traced circles in condensation. She nudged a scrap of vellum toward the group, its edges singed with Harold the Great's sigil. 447 souls, she said, tapping the census ledger. "Half arrived like us, half born here, that scout ship's reactor core," her finger slid to the crude map's center. "Still powering their lights after 3 centuries. Zara whistled through her tusks, leaning in to examine the schematics. "So what's the catch? No way a backwater this cozy doesn't have skeletons in its closet." As if summoned, the tavern door creaked open. A figure in patched robes stood silhouetted against the geothermal plant's glow, scythe still in hand, and the sheep outside began to bleat in perfect unison. The hood fell back to reveal a face too young for the legends, sharp Eldarin cheekbones softened by laugh lines, silver hair cropped short over ears still rounded with youth. Harold the Great looked nothing like his statues. "Enough!" His shout scattered the sheep's eerie chorus mid-bleat. One particularly defiant locked eyes with Ganyu before deliberately chewing a mouthful of clover. Harold sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "They hold grudges better than my ex-wives." The scythe's handle thumped against the floorboards as he leaned on it. "Needed test subjects for temporal anchoring spells. Sheep brains are conveniently disposable." His grin flashed, sudden and bright, also delicious with rosemary. The entire flock bolted for the hills. Ganyu pressed a glove to her mouth, shoulders shaking. Behind her, Alice's optics cycled through 12 distinct zoom levels, recording every twitch of Harold's sheepish, expression as he gestured to the geothermal plant's glowing pipes. So, who wants to see where paradoxes go to die? Dizzle's claws dug into the table. Finally, she growled, someone who cuts the mysticism crap. The control room's holograms flickered like dying fireflies as Harold's revelation settled over them. Behind the glass partition, the scout ship's reactor pulsed erratically, its containment field fraying at the edges like old lace. Alice's optics tracked the energy spikes with mounting alarm. "Fortunately," Harold said, tapping a console to life, "we now have the Orion's hope to cannibalize for parts." His grin faltered when Zara's rifle barrel swung toward his chest. "And what if we want to take our friends and our ship and leave?" Zara's voice was deceptively light, but her finger hadn't left the trigger guard. Harold sighed, pulling up a star map. The Dyson cluster glowed amber, except for the crimson blot at its heart. "You can't." The image zoomed in, revealing a shimmering energy barrier encircling the system. "One-way transit only." His finger jabbed at the pulsating red dot. 16 trillion Burnak. Ganyu's glove muffled her gasp. "Energy beings." With a nasty hobby. Harold's smile didn't reach his eyes. "One escapes, galactic plague 2. The projection shifted to Earth's silhouette. "Buffet for 2 weeks. Dizzle's tail lashed. Zara looked ready to eat Harold instead. The probe's final transmission lasted 3 seconds, just long enough to show the barrier's shimmering edge before the feed dissolved into static. Amara's claws punched through the console's casing, sending sparks skittering across the Orion's Hope's deck. "Fuck." The word tore from her throat, raw as the week-old blisters on her palms. 7 days spent jury-rigging sensors, 7 nights dreaming of Zara's laugh echoing through corridors that no longer existed. And for what? Harold's smug face floated in her mind, his damn sheep still chewing cud in the projection's corner. "Told you," his grin said without moving. She wrenched her hand free, flecks of synthetic blood floating in 0G before the ship's gravity well snatched them down. The helm console lit under her touch, Dyson Prime's coordinates already cued. "Plotting return vector," Alice announced, her voice too calm. Amara's tail lashed. "Like we have a choice." Behind her, Dizzle's growl vibrated through the deck plates. "Next time, we eat the historian first." 3 weeks bled into the ship's hull like welding sparks, each day measured in stripped conduits and realigned power grids. The Orion's Hope surrendered her bones gladly. Titanium ribs reforged into stabilizer arrays, neural networks transplanted into the geothermal plant's aging systems. Harold supervised from the shadows, his scythe traded for a wrench as the colony's lights burned brighter than they had in centuries. By dawn on the 21st day, New Eldoran's census board ticked over to 452. Zara celebrated by hoisting Dizzle onto the reactor's casing, both of them singing off-key shanties as steam billowed through fresh pipes. Ganyu tended seedlings in the hydroponics bay, her gloves crusted with alien soil. And Alice. She stood at the observation deck's edge, watching Amara carve their names into the ship's salvaged bulkhead. The metal was warm under her fingers. The stars were silent. The end.